All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about some of the hires that have happened this offseason. Napier has done a really good job, letting us see a little bit of insight into what's in his head the last couple of weeks. I've really enjoyed seeing these press conferences and some of the interviews that he's done. I feel like I've learned more about Napier in the last 2 weeks than I have in the previous 3 years. And one of the things that he has talked about is the fact that now that the rules are changed and it really doesn't matter how many coaches you have, he wants more staff, he wants more coaches on the field. Are you of the mindset that, yeah, shoot, let's get a coach for every player, let's get one-on-ones going all the time? Or are you of the mindset that, like, at a certain point you're so large that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing and that can get out of hand? Like, where do you fall on that?
Yeah, again, this probably falls back to me being overly optimistic on things, but I feel we've kind of been working shorthanded. There's been guys asked to do too much. There's been guys asking to do more than they should be. We really didn't have a true linebacker coach last year, right? So it was Ron Roberts or Austin Armstrong's. I don't know who it was. You could probably tell me better. Than I don't. No, I don't think anybody knows who it actually fell under because Ron's role changed throughout the year, and then
Right.
you obviously had Will Harris taking over the entire secondary. What's that?
The Fallner Peterson? I don't.
Well, it was the title when going in was Ron. He was the linebacker coach slash co-executive head coach. Like, it was his, but I think Austin stepped in.
Executive head coach of the defense. Get it right, Shelton.
And listen, I don't even know the titles anymore. Okay, doing the best that I can to keep up. So we had that was split up the year before that. I know when Corey Raymond was here that he had the safeties, but not the cornerbacks, and then there's always been confusion.
His first year he had one, but not the other. Then he had both the second year, and then he was gone. So.
And Austin was a helping part of the secondary. Yeah. Like I was talking. So I feel like there's just too many people going around. It feels like now it seems like overload because we didn't have it. I don't think that it is. We've got a linebacker coach now and Robert Bala from Washington. And the safeties room, which look, that safeties quarterback room is massive. There's like, I think almost 15 guys in that room. Yeah. And if you could really split up and segregate it of like, hey, let's let these 5 guys go work with Coach Vinny, our GTL guy, Jim Tail Laundry. And these guys go work with Will Harris for certain things, for certain specifics. And hey, let's focus on these. I don't mind it. I think there needs to be, yes, a focus of where do we come back to. I know there has been conversations with, I've heard through the grapevine where the line gets split up between edge and defensive linemen. And I think sometimes they would like to have some of that be lined up. But I'm a fan of it. I said it last night. I go, look, get over the titles. We have our own hypothesis on the title. With I don't think Ron wants to do anything. I think he wants just to call plays. So you give Bala and Vinny that co-DC title. It allows for them to do certain things in recruiting that they wouldn't be if they didn't have the title. So
and it's how you steal them over from where they are too. Most of these guys want something that they can add to their resume. You know, when you talk about Vinny, he'd just taken a DC job. So I can definitely see the scenario where he's like, yeah, I'll come coach at Florida. But listen, I was just adding this to my resume. I need that, on that piece of paper. Does it mean anything on the field? Not necessarily, but does it help him down the road coaching career-wise? Probably. And whatever, go for it. The titles don't bother me at all. Like, I don't care. I know a lot have been made about the fact that there's 3 defensive coordinators and, what does that mean? And how does this work? And to me, that's just something on paper. I don't think that, and by the way, Alabama has 3 co-defensive coordinators currently. So, we're not the only place to do it. But do you think that there's ever a scenario, like, how do you keep it under control? Is Ron Roberts, because he is the executive head coach of the defense, he's the point person, everything runs through him, and that he communicates with Billy? What's the chain of command there going to look like? I'll get right back to the video, but first, I appreciate BetUS for all their support. Just quickly, make sure you're betting with them and using their code YouTube150. That'll get you a 150% signing bonus on your first deposit. You'll also get 125% on your next 2 deposits. All of that up to $2,000. With the Super Bowl coming up and a red-hot Gator basketball team on weekly, make sure you're betting with BetUS.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the first time in Billy's tenure where there is a true kind of fine line. Now, when Austin first came in, I think that was supposed to be the idea, but I think with Raymond and Coach Chaos kind of being part of the old regime, I think he struggled in that first year, given why there was miscommunication and why those 2 got let go. This is all my outside perspective looking in, and then you bring in Ron to be the babysitter this past year. Obviously, there's mix up in that. I, he said it in his presser yesterday that yeah, Ron is the guy. It'll go through him. Everyone's very aware of their roles. So yeah, I think there's actually more organization than there has been, and we're carrying over finally. Because again, think about it. In Austin's first year, it was a new transfer. Then last year, you had the confusion of who's running this thing. And finally, Ron took it for the last half of the year and is going into this year with clear cut the guy. Like there is no, hey, no. They're co-defensive coordinator because they're gonna take on certain roles. But as for who's calling the plays and who's cutting it, it's Ron, which I'm cool with. I'm happy with that.
I mean, listen, I think that we saw the improvement the second half of the season. We knew something drastic happened. I think lots of us are, under the impression that that is the defense play calling job changed hands and that was kind of what made such a huge impact. So I'm good with it. Let's talk about another play caller, though. So Coach Napier has made it abundantly clear that he will be calling plays this year.
We're not certain yet. It's
what we're there's a lot of people involved and there will be a lot of roles, but what we know is we're not bringing in an outside offensive coordinator. That is for sure. So give me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, look, and you said we kind of learned more about him. His presser yesterday, I read it. I didn't see it. But by reading it, I felt like he was more open than ever before. Yeah. But and they asked him, like, why are you choosing to do this? And he's like, look, this is what got me here. I like the fact that he kind of just stood on that hill. He's like, this is what got me here. This will maybe become a head coach. This is what I've lived and died by up until this point. It's like, when you kind of say it like that, it's like, I am the coach of the Florida Gators. Without me sticking to this, I wouldn't be here. So I'm not going to go away from that now because I've got people screaming at me thinking that I should do otherwise, because in my darkest moments that we probably didn't know about or see, I stuck to this, and now it's got me to this point. Yeah. I'm cool with it.
I see the rationale behind it, and I understand what he's saying. I think that if you were abundantly honest, if you with the stats, it's probably on paper not the best decision. I mean, I think analytically, I don't think it's likely to be the best decision. And I also don't know that I even agree that play calling is what has gotten him to where he is. I think relationships are part of that. I think roster building is part of that. I think identifying talent is a large part of what has made him so successful. And I think you just look at the rosters that he built at Louisiana, you can see the diamonds in the rough that he found that were able to immediately come over and play an SEC caliber schedule. That's, I mean, guys that didn't have SEC offers, right? That's why they went to Louisiana. They didn't have the opportunity for the SEC until he made the jump to Florida, but they thrived in this conference. Like, I think talent identification is really one of his incredible strong suits, but I do get it, right? Like, even if I would say like, that's not the decision that I think you should make, I don't know that I think that you're being, analytical enough on the decision. I get it. I understand it. And he's the one that has to live and die by his choices. So I can, if you think this is a do or die year for you, who do you bet on but yourself? And so from that aspect, I get it.
Yeah, look, I think you kind of turn my perspective on it a little bit. You make a lot of sense where the other things that you said that he does well on. And I do feel like, hey, sometimes Billy puts a lot of yes guys around him. And again, it's just, I could be wrong on that, but there's got to be, and that's my thought process. There's got to be somebody on the staff, like you just looked at it and goes, Billy, we love you. You do this, we got the Oreo approach. This, and this. Well, fantastic. But
not as good.
There's a little juice on it, And Billy, I want you to recognize this so we can keep you, because I understand you're going to live and die by this, but you do why you're here, like you just said, and somebody needs to tell them you're here because of everything else, which is we wouldn't be here without any of those things. But we are at a point, the ship is at a perfect point to take advantage of it, and we need to get it over the hump. And you have it. Go look at the data yourself. You're an analytical guy. Don't let me tell you. Go look at it. Your data, you're not going to get us over the hump. And that's a good point. And for me, I probably have become more of that yes man, where I'm like, look, Coach, you've done everything else good so far, so I'm going to trust you with this.
Yeah.
But there is a point in me of like, we're in a win now. Yeah. And are you the best option to win now?
he is capable of winning 10 games with this team, with this offense, but I don't know that I think he's capable of winning 12 games. And that's kind of the difference. And I think like there's not that many head coaches that are good enough to call their own plays as well. It's not that common in college football anymore. I think Ryan Day is a great example. I would consider Ryan Day an elite play caller when he was a coordinator, not a good play caller, an elite play caller. And when he became head coach at Ohio State and he retained the play calling duties, the last year he had the 46th best offense. When he hired Chip Kelly, they won a national championship and they had the third overall offense in college football. And it's not that Ryan Day is not a good offensive coordinator. He's an elite offensive coordinator, but he's wearing the hat of head coach as well. And I don't know that you could ever honestly say Billy Napier is an elite play caller. I think you could say he's a really good play caller. And I think that's a fair statement. He's been really good at a lot of different stops. But you kind of have to be elite to even attempt to wear both hats. And even that doesn't always work out. Like think about Sark, who I think people would consider elite. I think he probably cost himself the SEC title game against Georgia because of bonehead plays. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. I'm not a fan of wearing both hats. I even think about like Florida has really struggled in the middle eight, right? We are not great in the 4 minutes going into halftime or the 4 minutes coming out of halftime. But that 4 minutes coming out of halftime, you're making those halftime adjustments to be ready for those 4 minutes. But if you're the head coach, you're also talking to your entire team, right?
Sure.
You're trying to pump them up. How are you doing both of those things at one time? And is that why we're not great when we come out in the third quarter? And I wish he could look at it in that, like, this is not a knock on you as a play caller. This is not us saying you're not good at this job. This is us saying we want you to be a head coach. We don't want you to have to go back to being an offensive coordinator somewhere. But
Yeah, and I don't know if these conversations have happened, and that is my concern with maybe there's again too many yes men because again the fan base we all have our thoughts and opinions about it, but there's got to be somebody there that has the cojones to point to him and like. But at the same time, is there a guy out there that you can do it? Because I don't agree with coming in and flipping the playbook. I like it.
I don't have any issue with the system at all. I mainly have issue with some situational things, but I think also, so Ron Roberts, if he's going to really be the executive head coach of the defense and everything runs through him, and Billy has the ability as the head coach to be a little more hands off in that area, maybe that's enough. Maybe that has freed up some more time to be able to focus on the offense and the head coaching duties. I think it would be awesome. I don't know if you've paid attention to this, but some of the playoff teams had analytics coaches that literally stood right next to the offensive coordinator, the head coach, and ran numbers constantly on play options while in real time. And like, maybe is that something? Okay, you want to call the plays, but maybe if there's someone standing here that says, okay, well, that only has a 4% chance of working, so maybe let's not go with that one. Maybe
basically ask Madden. We've been joking about that. Like, give us an Ask Madden. The coach. Hey, coach, these are your best 3 plays. Which one you want, boss? Here's your highest success rate. Look, I said trust in Russ. Russ obviously got the promotion.
Yeah.
And I challenge him. I mean, not that he listens to the show, but I'm like, look, you got a title. Push back. If there's an opportunity, you're up there, you're seeing this, I would be like, yo, tap in, cut coach's headset. I'm like, yo, DJ, we're doing this, bud. That I think would be huge because my biggest thing that I've complained on is like, it's not necessarily the playbook itself. It's situational awareness. The guy can't read a pulse of a room. I'm like, dude, what? Yeah, he's just looking down at his playbook. Like, hey guys, we're gonna run this route. And it's like 3rd and 15 at the 10-yard line. It's like, Billy, like that's not the time. Like he doesn't have, like he's not looking at what's going on there. That's what it seems like sometimes. So that has always been a complaint of mine. But yeah, look, I know there's been talks of Spurrier Jr. or Buddy broke the news of him coming on as an analyst. Maybe he plays that kind of role, that analytical guy that you were talking about, because he's called plays.
Yeah, that could be good. And when we say like surrounded by yes men, I do think it's important to clarify. I don't think that Billy looks for yes men. I just think that he is a likable guy. He is agreeable. He has a way of selling his vision to everybody else. So it's more like, I don't even want to say like everybody falls in line because it's not like he's a tyrant. I just think he does a good job selling the dream. And so everybody's got this same vision, but they don't have like an aerial view, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. I think again, you want people to buy in. You want them to say get brainwashed, right, to an
Yeah,
extent. And again, like I said, maybe I've become too much of a yes man because I'm like, I'd be like, I trust you. Like you've done these things right. I'm gonna ride with this too. But at some point, you do need to take a step back and say, hey, can we just? I trust everything that you're doing, but can we take a step back and look at this and say, like this is what we need here. Like there's plenty of data to show. And if and maybe they've had these conversations
yeah,
and he's like, yes, I agree, but by doing moving this guy here, I'm going to do this guy and this guy. It's going to allow for me to make up here. So
yeah,
if it's not, and they say, hey, if it doesn't work, and we'll try these things out. If we have two burn games now, and if we feel like there's a little bit of a hiccup, then Rush, you have the promotion for a reason. I'll be more than likely to pass it up. We don't know if these conversations are happening,
yeah,
but
and
I
that's
hope they are.
they could very well, and I would hope that every off season is spent figuring out what we can do differently, what we can do better. That's the whole point. And this is an elite staff, and so I'm thinking that that is happening. Hopefully, let's talk a little bit about special teams. We did just sign the number one kicker in the country. I was very excited about that.
Stability.
Um, I am hoping that we will continue to have a focus on special teams. Did notice we had 10 men on the field in the bowl game a couple of times, and it really did bring back some PTSD, but hoping we don't see that at all in the 2025 season.
Yeah, that I mean that's got to be a big thing, especially with these games. Like, and again, we had Tennessee was a close one. Georgia wasn't very close. We know kind of the situation of what happened there, but Tennessee is a big game. You go, you win that game, and just small nuances throughout the game. That's what special teams is. And when you're playing these big games against Texas, against Ole Miss, against FSU, they're going to come down to a big time play. And we've talked about it before. That was what Urban was huge on. I mean, it was that your special teams are special when for me as a kid, blocking a field goal was almost expected. I also remember I get PTSD from it now because I feel like Les Miles and LSU were just
Oh my
fake punt, fake field goal. Like it was
God.
bound to happen. We don't see it at all anymore. Like
Yeah.
I'm sitting there, I'm like, watch the fake, bro. Watch like ain't nobody got the dog in him anymore to do it. But back in those days, I mean, blocked field goals, fake field goals. I mean, it was like a run play. Like it was gonna happen. It was just like who's gonna get caught is what it
Yeah.
came down to.
We had Urban on the show one time, and I told him, I was like, I know it's beat into my head, block a punt, win the game, because you would write that on everything, and that Eric would bring home and stuff. And he was like, "Do you remember what the percentage is of it?" And I was like, no. And Eric in the background's like, 90%, 90%. You block a punt, 90% of the time you win a game. Like it's been 20 years.
Really?
Yes, that is the stat. 9 out of 10 times, if you block a punt, you win the game. Um,
That's crazy. And they don't happen at all, I feel like. I mean, look, it makes sense because the punt usually is in a time where nobody's really paying attention. It's 7-7 ball game, and you blunder it, and the momentum just flips,
yeah.
and it just yeah, the defense comes back on the field, fired up. The offense is like, what just happened? Like you know what I mean? Like it makes total sense. That's crazy. Billy needs to lock it in. We need some block punts this
We
year.
need some block punts this year. All right, before we talk about an early look at the upcoming schedule, I want to ask you one more thing. So we had kind of an overhaul of the strength and conditioning staff prior
Mhm.
to last season. I do kind of overall believe you got to have a strength staff in place for at least a year to fully see the results. But I think we saw a difference. Would you agree?
Yeah, I loved it. I know there's a lot of complaints on injuries. I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on like saying what pointed to it or what didn't point to
Yeah.
it, but we talked about it a ton last year. It wasn't even the fact that we were just getting out coached or outplayed. Like we were just getting bullied. Or 2 years
Yeah.
ago, we were just getting bullied. We looked like pansies. And this year, the exact opposite happened. I mean,
We fully.
we were grinding, literally, just trying to get W's, but bullying guys at the end. Like everyone just looked stronger, faster. We had, and you've tweeted this before, and I say it all the time on the show. There's a speed change when you watch the playoff games or these other teams. Like you can just see the clicks, the sound of the pads, and we showed glimpses of that this year, which really excited me, especially on defense, of guys just hitting harder, running faster, all those things.
The defense, the improvement in the defense over the course of the season was honestly wild to watch. Like I know I've talked to you about it, but that Texas A&M game, we were down really close watching D-line warm up, and it was just going through the motions. So unimpressive. Knew from that moment we were going to get blown out. Just watching the effort there. Fast forward, 4 games, and the all out intensity and effort of this defense just did an absolute 180. And I don't think that there is a single point in the season where I was like, man, we look tired. that never was a thought this entire season, and I think that's obviously credit to the strength and conditioning staff. And as far as injuries go, I don't know. I lived through back when there was 13 guys that tore their ACL one off season, and that's when they decided that it was from running stadiums. So then they weren't going to be allowed to run stadiums anymore. And Muschamp had teams. I mean, when we lost that Charleston Southern game, we had more injuries than we probably had healthy players. So I think maybe I'm slightly immune to blaming strength and conditioning staffs from injuries, because I just feel like that's kind of part of football. But I'm excited to see what another off season on this staff does, because this, like I said, that whole year really does make a difference.
Yeah, and people forget, but Tyler came in because Craig Fitzgerald was the guy who
Right.
obviously left for Boston College. He left, I think, not even now. I think that's like in March last
Mhm.
year.
Yeah.
So, like, he was fully established for sure,
Yeah.
like moving things along, and then Tyler had to step in. And again, that's we kind of complain about Billy promotes within and promotes his guys. Tyler was his guy,
Yeah.
and has really hit the ground running. And I'm beyond excited. He mentioned yesterday, I think Kofi, the new edge rusher from UMass, has put on 12
Mhm.
to 15 pounds. Now, I don't know if he's eating buffet, but I assume it was good 12 to 15 given that he shouted it out. So,
Yeah.
and we obviously saw, I mean, George Gumps, these guys that who came in and made such a big impact. You got to credit what the strength and conditioning were able to do. Someone like a Jeremiah Smith, I mean, what their strength and conditioning staff did for him. I'm excited to see what we call him Dolly Wally, with Dallas Wilson. Like, what is he going to be able to put on? Studervant, Eugene, after he's healthy. Like, these guys can really bulk up. Kermani, that's been a big focus, I know, for him to put on more weight. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm interested to see for sure.